The next keynote speaker is Marco Soriano, who's going to be talking about sustainable development and clean tech. And we are going to show a quick film for 2 minutes before we go ahead with that.
Present to you perspective. We bet, we invest in character. Character is defined in our family office as three things. First, awareness. We all come to places like this to be aware of information, where the market's trending, where are the patterns, where can we make money, right? Awareness is also perspective. Because if you have no perspective, there is no way that your investment will have any social impact into what we're doing in this planet. And finally, action. Are you actually taking action? Today you're learning, today you're being aware, today we're telling you all the beautiful things that are happening out there, but are you actually taking action? And if so, I'm a fourth generation. As I had said, it was my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad, me, and now I have 4 children. So the question in my mind is, what do I teach these kids? How do I set up a succession plan? How do I invest in a world that we are all aware is being damaged? Climate change, climate degradation. So the approach today, or the awareness, the perspective, and the action, which is going to be led by examples, it starts with sustainable development and clean tech. And there's plenty of that out there. But you bet on character. If you invest in character, it's guaranteed that the person that is going to be running that business will make it successful. If your approach is just numerical, thinking that it looks great, that business plan, and you're not looking at the team behind the company, it is also guaranteed that your investment is going to fail. Because it's people that drive the companies and not companies that drive the people. So, a couple of points I took down. As we all aware, sustainable development and clean tech is today one of the main topics for family offices, private equities, venture funds, venture capital, serial entrepreneurs, you name them. But why? There are 6 main reasons, and I'm going to delineate each one of them so that we can discuss them. Number 1, ESG criteria. Does anyone know what ESG stands for? Can you help me? Yes, sir. Environmental, social, and governance. Very good. I learned this topic when I started working in my very early years in my career in 2001, where I worked for the World Bank. The World Bank and the IMF, together with the United Nations, came up with this concept of millennial development goals, which was a number of goals and objectives to reduce poverty, to increase awareness of climate change at that time. And this is 20 years plus ago. Today, do you feel that we have caught up with this? It took 100 years to increase 1 billion people in our world population. Today, it will take 10 years. By 2035, that we will have another billion people in this planet. We're growing exponentially, and growing exponentially has many, many, many different challenges. So what is that ESG framework in your families, in your investment thesis, in your thematic research that you are doing? What are you lacking? Point two, the boom, because we're talking about this. There are 4 different sectors here that we should take into account. 1, energy efficiency. 2, renewable energy. 3, waste reduction. And 4, pollution control. Now we hear about solar, we hear about wind, we hear about e-mobility, we hear about decarbonization credits, decarbonization footprints, all these lovely things, but how much are we really aware of what's happening today? By show of hands, just out of curiosity, how many of you understand, if you are involved in manufacturing at all, what the footprint, the carbon footprint of your company is? Raise your hand if you actually know it. To my point, we're aware, but we have not yet grown this perspective to take action. Number 3, the regulatory support. We talk about the support from the EU. Perfect. How we're getting into these funds or lost funds that the EU is offering to companies. Are you innovative enough? Because if you're innovative enough, there are pre-requirements for any EU commission to be able to determine if you qualify for those funds. Do we know these requirements? Anybody? No. To be innovative in a country like Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, just to give you an idea, you need to have at least 1/3 of the staff that works for you with a master's degree. So we need to be careful who we hire or who we're betting on. You also need to understand that as a pre-requirement, your company needs to be at a certain level of what is called a CTR. There are 9 different levels that the European Commission defines as levels of innovation, whether you are a very, very early stage or you're at the very last stage when you finally have a product to go to market with, to commercialize. So which state and how do you know in which state you're in? And this is information, by the way, that is on the internet, it's on the website. It's not information that is hidden from you, but it's there for you to learn about it. It's not promoted. We hear about all this funding available throughout Europe, but it's not promoted. The Paris Agreement. Everybody's also discussing this because in the most recent case in the US, Donald Trump has said that he will walk away from the Paris Agreement. But what nobody knows is that there's another action that took place that was deposited recently in August by the Biden's administration, which is going to be embraced over the next 10 years, regardless. And that's called the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. And the IRA offers in the US, incentivizes manufacturing with 20 different tax incentives. It's very impressive. So politics does play a big role in what's happening, how the economies are being shifted, shaped, and promoted or embraced by entrepreneurs worldwide. Whether you choose to live in Portugal or you choose to live in New York or you choose to live in London, doesn't matter really. It's the mindset that gets you there. How are you going to do it? 4, the mitigation of risk. Decarbonization. What is it? I still haven't figured this out. You're smiling. What do you think decarbonization is? I have no idea. What I am doing, as an example, because we are the first OEM in electric vehicles in Italy with an artisanal approach rather than mass production, because this is what people think all the time. We need to mass produce in order to compete with China, with India, with the US, with Mexico, whatever manufacturing is being massively produced. For those that have been to Italy, you know we have a very artisanal approach to everything that we do. Granted, we take forever to get it done, but once it's done, it's beautiful, right? You're not gonna compare a Tesla and a Ferrari next to each other, or a Lamborghini and a Peugeot. Impossible. So, the artisanal approach, which is the microeconomics, the microfinancing of these people that take their time, is where we should pay attention. This is where I'm paying attention. And it goes back to what I'm saying. Bet on character, not on the business. It may take longer, but you're going to have something better in the market. Decarbonization, we have no idea. So what we're doing is, for every motorcycle that we're doing, which is what you saw in that video, we're planting a tree. I'm producing, and I'm happy to announce officially that we signed a deal with McLaren USA, who is going to be our main distributor. Amazing news, but at the same time, puts me on my toes, because now I need to produce for one of the largest brands in the world, and God forbid, I make a mistake. But for every motorcycle that I am producing, I have planted already a tree in my premises, in my buildings, and so forth. To me, that's decarbonization. Taking action for everything that I'm doing out there that is going to be, in essence, damaging our planet because of the footprint that batteries have in place. What else are we doing? Battery systems, for those that are involved in battery systems, have a life cycle. So you can choose whether you want to make your business a battery business, which means your client will have to come back to you in 5 years and say, I need another battery system because this one is done. And you can say, I can sell you another battery system, or you can say, give it back to me. We'll recycle it, we'll reconfigure it, we'll recondition it, and give it back to you, so that you have another 5 to 10 years on that same battery system. The same thing goes for the frame, to some extent the wheels. I mean, there are parts in the automotive and the two-wheel sector that we can help. You know, it goes back to that question, I think it was you, about the computers, recycling computers, and so forth, right? So how do we recycle automotive? How do we recycle anything that is out there? And now we're all aware of junkyards, right, in the world. So how do we really resolve that issue of waste management, waste reduction? And these are the small steps that we're taking. I'm not Nissan, I'm not Toyota, I'm just Soriano Motors, with a lovely history behind us. But I think small steps motivates smaller groups, and those smaller groups are the ones that are going to make the big difference out there. Number 5, well, obviously we need to talk about financial returns of the social impact, energy storage, sustainable agriculture, e-mobility. I was just recently in a meeting with a scientist from Leonardo, which is the space program in Rome, discussing how data centers in the world pollute our system through energy deficiencies, a very, very high level CO2 footprint. So what are they doing now? What are we talking about? Creating satellites, space, data centers. Think about that for 1 second. Why is that good, or why is that bad? It can resolve many, many issues if you think about it. Cybersecurity is one of the major issues, and I know some of you may have already invested in these sectors. But the hacking of a satellite, or the being able to hack something up there, is quite impossible unless you are, by default, a government trying to do so. So companies, enterprises, or ES, enterprise solutions, will be looking for solutions of the sort. That is where and how we're looking at our own thematic research and our investment criteria. 6, the challenges. This is very clear, and this is just to bring more awareness. In the last few months, we had several disasters worldwide. Maybe you saw them, maybe you didn't. Maybe it affected you, maybe it didn't. We had in Taiwan the Kankei typhoon. 40 billion worth of damage. In the United States, very recently, and very personal to me because my mother lives right in the middle where that hurricane was going to come through, and my mom is 82, stereotypical Italian mom. I'm not moving. I say, Mom, there's a hurricane coming through. It's my time, it's my time. And I had to go there, I had to fly, I had to get my mother out, move her out, and give or take, we had, the Milton and Helene. That was worth $60 billion worth of damage. We also had the floods in Spain 2 weeks ago. You guys saw Valencia, all the way up to Barcelona. Over 400 people dead. So what I'm saying to you, well, the flood in France, 3 weeks ago, massive flood. The signs are there. Are we actually paying attention? Are we actually being aware, taking into the perspective, and taking action to make smart investments that have a social impact in not our lives, forget about us. We're not talking about us anymore here. We're talking about our children and their children. My way of thinking today is 50 years from now. Whatever work we do today, whatever you're planting, whatever you're seeding, whatever it is you're doing, is for the future. Be honest. We're already at that age where if we did it, we did it. If we didn't, well, it's for our kids. It's for the children. It's for the future. Judge character. Do not judge the business so much. Love to take questions from you, please. Controversies, comments, whatever works. Max. Can we have a mic for Max, please?
I have a loud voice first. You're doing well. Marco, I did have a sneaking suspicion that you might rob me of the thick end of my own keynote, which I'm going to do hopefully later on today, because much of what you've been talking about resonates with all of us, and it's certainly strike a chord with me, okay? Without going too much into political nuances, in the light of what happened, or took place, whichever way you see it, last week in the USA, how, and knowing a little bit about your own political preferences, how would you assess, how would you really, what would be your opinion, whether the re-election of Mr. Trump would help? It certainly is bound to promote innovation, crypto, no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. But, for example, I've just firsthand just got this information a few days ago. Mr. Trump is now just about to withdraw from the Paris Agreement the way he did during his first presidency. So would that not be a bit of a controversy? How would you personally assess, in the light of what you're doing with Soriano and well beyond, will it help or will it be a major setback? Thank you.
Sure, excellent question, and one that, will touches on politics. Everybody starts making faces in their eyes, and you don't want to voice your opinion, and that's, I think, the wrong approach. The fact that Donald Trump's rhetoric was extremely political to say two things that did not make sense to me, and for one big reason. One, to pull out of the Paris Agreement, he saw it as highly bureaucratic, political, and so on. People dictating him what to do, basically. Maybe he's being poor advised, okay? Two, he's talking about raising tariffs for imported goods. So for someone who's making Italian products, who sells to the US market, this is horrible. It's horrible. But then again, who is next to him today? Who? Elon Musk. And what does he make? Electric vehicles, e-mobility. So it makes no sense that his discourse or his rhetoric to win political favors, or whatever you may want to call them, is going to be defined the one guy whose objective is to electrify the automotive industry in the whole world. So we have to also be, a little aware of who are the players around this presence or these administrations that are today, not just there, worldwide, being advised. Again, family offices, we do not look at short term, because even though it's only 4 years, it's really 3 that they get to do anything. We look at 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I lived in Hong Kong, and the Chinese impressed me because they talk about 50 to 100 years. And in our minds, it's almost insane to think like that. Let alone when you're looking at a business plan. 3-year, 5-year business plan is what you do. When you do your due diligence, 3 years, 5 years, you go back, that's about it. This is how we do it. This is how we operate. So, to your question, don't be afraid. I think we're going to be just fine. Anybody else?
Next question
Ooh,
here.
the laptop lady.
Hi, thanks so much. Really appreciate you highlighting the importance in investing in clean tech. I'm wondering about the communities that suffer from the resource extraction in low and middle income countries, and if you have metrics to measure that when you look at different investment opportunities.
So mining, we're going back to mining of resources, I think is where you're referring to. So in Portugal today, there's a massive place in the north near Porto where they have found lithium deposits. I think some of you may have heard about this, but it's very political to go there because it actually crosses the border into Galicia in Spain, and of course the Spanish government, the Portuguese government. It goes back 1,000 years to who should do what. How are they going to do that, right? Places in Brazil, we heard Elon Musk bought one of the largest lithium mining companies there because that's where the future is. The Chinese are buying lithium mining companies, copper, for example. Copper is the future of electronics. There is not a single electronic in this place that has now copper in it. Aluminum, iron. If anybody here is involved in metals, precious metals, as a form of investment to diversify and mitigate risk in your portfolio, by all means, you're doing the right thing. To your question, how do we address the communities in these places? How do we make their lives better? It's a difficult question to answer. I suppose, and we had this in my family back when we were mining gold and silver, and those, I don't know if you know, those concessions are only 100 years, and typically they rotate to other families unless you are, those families, regardless of where they're located, they need an economic system so that they can sustain themselves, they can eat, they can feed, they can send their generation, their second generations, third generations to go to school, educate themselves. And typically what happens in these rural areas that we're discussing is that these people will move into the cities, and that generation, the third generation, will grow. That's the best thing that I've seen, because if you're implying we should stop mining, it's impossible. We need it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Big
Everyone.
round of applause to Marco. Thank you, Marco. Thanks.